Tonight's class we begin Perikut Beis, which is really the climactic stage of these initial prakim, the climactic Perik prakim, and it begins with the word v'habeinani. And this is the whole. This Tuesday, just to note, Sunday. This past Sunday was 200 years. The 200th anniversary. We all know the passing of the Alter Rebbe. Exactly 200 years. To the day, for that matter, the Alter Rebbe passed away on a Matzah Shabbos this year. That the Chavdalet Tevis, the 24th Tevis, was Matzah Shabbos, was Sunday. And I've just put it in the context of this class. The whole Sefer is called the Sefer of the Average, the Beinani, and this is what actually one of the revolutionary dimensions of the Sefer, or of the Alter Rebbe, if you will, that he wrote a whole Sefer, which is the fundamental of the Torah Chassidus, the work, the philosophy of Chassidus. That, and again, this is part of the emes and brilliance, or more so the emes of the Alter Rebbe, different than all before and after of telling people to aspire to be the tzaddik, but in a sense, once it becomes not realistic. Or especially the way the Alter Rebbe describes the tzaddik. You know, you say someone's a tzaddik, many people call themselves tzaddikim, other people call them tzaddikim. You're talking about this true description of the tzaddik, the way the Alter Rebbe calls or learns based on the Talmud what a tzaddik is. And many of the Musar Svarim, they demonstrate that this is the ultimate aspiration, or this is the aspiration. And when people get confused, they realize they're not such big tzaddikim. It becomes very confusing. And the problem when it becomes very confusing, when you don't deal with the ultimate aspiration, the ultimate goal or an objective. When it becomes confusing, it becomes, it loses its clarity, and it loses its focus, and then people could become lost for many years, sometimes decades. And as opposed to when you have, in the very beginning, you have a good lens. When you have a good lens, there's a good focus, and once you're able to focus on the goal, so you could make it bigger, smaller, but on the other hand, there's always a clear picture. This is the revolutionary term, or even demonstration of goal and purpose and objective of the Alter Rebbe. He called it the Sefer, and as the basis and philosophy of Chassidus, it's called the Sefer of Beinanim, of the average. And I thought it was very interesting that when we reached 200 years, this was all. That exactly this first class after this special landmark of a day. We begin actually with Perikut Beis, which is v'habeinani. I thought it was very interesting, at least worthwhile to mention. So v'habeinani, and this we come to the Beinani. It's very special, when I begin Perikut Beis in the cycle of the way it's divided to the year. It's v'habeinani. We reach what this is all about, and mainly the Alter Rebbe really teaches us who the Beinani is, that it's someone who never sins and never will sin, and he's still not called a tzaddik, he's called the average, which is on its own. How could the Beinani, someone never sin? Think about someone who never sinned in their life, never will sin. He's the tzaddik among tzaddikim. No, he's the Beinani. He's still the Beinani. And how does that work? It's warming just the habeinani as the Perik begins. Like we finally reached there. So my excitement will go on. V'habeinani hu shala'olam ein harag geiver kol kach lichvesh asayir k'tan. I will just as well preface that as we noticed, the Alter Rebbe, before he tells us what the Beinani, he crystallizes and clarifies who the tzaddik is, the tzaddik v'tovlei, tzaddik v'ralei, and then in the last pedic, the rasha v'tovlei and rasha v'ralei, and the many different levels which we can understand that there exist in the rasha v'tovlei and the rasha and the tzaddik v'ralei. And then we come to the Beinani. The puzzle starts. It starts making sense, and the puzzle starts. The pictures, the puzzle of the picture starts becoming more clear. And again, so much more because we understand what the tzaddik in the rasha is. So v'habeinani hu shala'olam ein harag geiver kol kach lichbesh asayir k'tan. And never does the evil strengthen itself to conquer the small city, which is the body, as the Alter Rebbe pointed out before in the 11th chapter, as in the 9th chapter, and Lihislabish beguf, that the evil should invest in the body, lachtiyai, to make it sin, which means to have the body sin. And Alter Rebbe is going to explain. And I want to use the term which we used before, rather in the last class, not the term, the example. We use the example, which I think it's a good example of someone fasting throughout the entire day. It's very special that you fast majority of the day, or you fast with one break, 2 breaks, and the overall you're fasting. Person usually would eat breakfast, lunch, supper. In this case, he's not eating, as a expression of his service to God, as an example. We're just using an example. But he just takes a small snack, takes a small drink of water, tastes something. It's special, but there's no comparison at all to someone who fasts the entire day. Because you're fasting the entire day, you're in, especially halachically. Yom Kippur, or any other fast, we're obligated to fast the entire day. So, but let's take this example one step further. Does it mean when someone fasts the entire day, is he completely removed from the whole phenomenon of eating? Quite on the contrary, he goes by and he smells food and he says, wow, delicious, I can't wait till I eat it later. The whole idea of eating is something very much alive within him. The only thing is, he's never putting something into his mouth those 24 hours. Ever. Not even a zip, not even a taste. But the whole idea, the concept, the notion of eating or drinking is completely not removed from him. And I'm using this example because this is the life of the Beinoni, but look at the day of his fasting, and the example is in his entire life. That the idea of sinning is not removed because he still has a heart, and in the heart, the Nefesh Bahamis is situated. He's not the tzaddik, which will be Arta Hara Mikirbechi. He never got rid of the evil, on no form or fashion. The evil is still potent within himself, and therefore he has this constant battle and war not to sin. Had he got rid of the evil, that goes always together. Not to elaborate, we elaborated this in the previous chapters. It goes together. It's the idea of conquering the evil within one midst goes together with ultimately no battle on the battlefield, meaning to say in a person's life, may it be in thought and speech and action. The fact that his evil is completely intact and it's sending constant signals for him to transgress, to invest his thought or speech or action. Action is something which is prohibited, and same thing mitzvahs say. There is a sense of laziness because the animal within him, within his heart, is again very strong and never lost its strength in no form or fashion because he's not tzaddik. If we understand that tzaddik, v'arta, on what level? Remember, it's tens of thousands of levels of tzaddikim, means that there's tens of thousands of ways that you diminish the strength and the potency of the Rav, the evil which exists within you. But he's not the tzaddik, so he's the Beinoni. So he's the Beinoni, it never lost its strength. And it's always sending its with mighty signals to think, speak, or do contrary to Ratzon Hashem. And similarly, that animal in the mitzvah says always could have this laid backness, if you will, the laziness not to serve Hashem b'simcha v'tov levov, and is learning Torah and is doing a mitzvah, or doing a mitzvah b'hiddur, or being careful in doing a mitzvah, etc. So why is he called the Beinoni? Because he never gave in. He never gives in, not once. In other words, he fasts the whole day. So again, in this example, we're using an example because we can get the a sense of what this is all about via this example. When someone fasts, it's not that he loses the whole temptation of eating. The temptation of eating is exactly intact as the day before. He fasts after. Now, we do feel it so many times that we fast. It probably happens to most of us that sometimes you fast the whole day. The next day, someone you're not rushing to eat as quick, and you have to think, is today maybe a fast day also? There's no question we could always train our bodies and in a way that because we become a little bit elevated, we become a little more refined, so we don't have to invest so much in eating if we practice. If the body practices or gets used to, is accustomed to fasting, but we're not going there. But we're just saying that when a person fasts on a particular day, the day he fasts, it's not that he completely loses touch with the whole idea of the satisfaction of food and eating and drinking. Not at all, not one bit. And the same thing in the life of the Beinoni. Because he's not a tzaddik, he never got rid of the evil, so the evil is very strong. and therefore it's sending its signals to chas v'shalom sin. But he yet is called the Beinani. He's called someone who never fasts because he never sins, because he's really fasting a whole day. So again, this is a whole day, but let's throw that whole day roll out his entire life. He never gives in once to that temptation or those signals which are coming from the heart.
Couldn't we say that in some ways the Beinani would get more schar because he's doing the mitzvahs, but he's also got to work a little bit harder than the tzaddik?
I hear.
Because the tzaddik has so internalized it. It's
Absolutely.
not an effort.
Absolutely. I'll just say like this. If you remember this question, this kid did come up the other day. Very possible. I would say yes. But in the same, just to understand that first of all, we're talking about, if you're talking about schar, it's possible. I will mention, which we mentioned a number of times, it's always possible that the tzaddik, till he became the tzaddik, went through the stages of Beinani as well, and therefore he's not lacking any schar. And another thing we mentioned, that we're talking about who is closer to the divine, who's closer to Hashem. There's no question that a tzaddik, in the end of the day, it's kind of a little bit of a angelic, if you will, like an angel. Doesn't have any. It's completely pure and Tov and Kaddish. Isn't that divine? It's aligned with Hashem, which is Tov, and obviously Hashem Malach is not Hashem, but it's Kaddish, it's Kedusha, completely holy. I mean, aligned with Hashem means to say it has that character, that godly character of something which is completely devoid of anything which is impure. That's an angel. And if you look at the life of the tzaddik, it's very similar. So if you look at how close he is to Hashem, or how davek, how klivi, how much he's overtly connected, or in his level of how much he cleaves to Hashem, or how much he's close to Hashem, and how much he's identical in different ways to the divine. Like Hashem says, Kedeshim tiyu ki kadishani, that we could adapt Hashem's Kedusha, we could attain to some degree, obviously. Hashem wants us to attain His Kedusha, and the tzaddik is very much there, as opposed to the Beinani. His ra, the evil within him, is completely intact. Right? Later the Alter Rebbe is going to tell us why it's called Kirasha, because he's just on the border there. Right? How much is it different? Let's go back to the example. Someone who's fasting and someone who's eating. See such a big difference in their character, their spirituality, and their spiritual level. He's holy, he's fasting today. You're not holy, you're not fasting today. And I'm not talking about the day of Kippur, that obviously someone transgresses when he doesn't fast. Take a regular Monday. He's holy because he's fasting today. You're not holy because you're not fasting today. Well, if he's doing it every day, if he's fasting every day, I would say again, because we use this example of fasting on one day as a Beinani is something throughout his whole entire life. But we use the example of fasting. He fasts every single day of his life. Okay, that's kind of make it say he's a holy spiritual person. But someone one day out of the blue, he's fasting and you're not fasting. Does it become he's holy and you're not? Pretty much on the same level. Now, he's not involved in eating. But you can't say because he's fasting one day he's a holy person, because his connection to eating is very similar to the one who's actually eating. The only thing is he's not, and therefore in this case, in the end of the day, what Torah demands from us is to keep a pure thought, speech, and action. That's what Torah demands. Torah never said to the Jew, uproot, or Torah never said to the Jew, if you want to know you're in, is if you uproot any temptation to worldly matters, or even things which are permitted, which are extra, or even this prohibited. Torah, there's no command in Torah which tells the Jew, you want to know if you're close to me, that you have no temptations in anything which is physical, mundane, or even the prohibited. No mandate like that in Torah. Torah says, do not do anything inappropriate. Don't speak anything inappropriate. Don't even, chas v'shalom, think anything inappropriate, which is naturally much more difficult. But as we mentioned a few times, the person has complete dominance over his heart not to accept that signal once he realizes, right? You're dealing in milliseconds. There's someone who's truly pure over here. In other words, if someone truly doesn't transgress, because you're dealing milliseconds, right? It's out completely. Notice the moment someone notices inappropriate, he throws it out. Torah also gives a command on that, but Torah never says that. There's no mandate in Torah to tell the Yid that if you have that taiva, you have the temptation, you're out of the picture. You're not a from Yid. Never. Torah says that you allow that to unfold, allow that to be implemented, then you're called a Rasha. May it be in speech or in action or in thought, even in thought. But allow an inappropriate thought to come in, it's like in the middle of Yom Kippur. I just took a taste, I took a bite of a sandwich, one bite. In this case, again, we're just using as an analogy. Let's not get put together the two, but it just as an analogy. It's like I took a bite. The Rasha never takes, the Beinoni never takes a bite. It means to say he never allows even a thought, once he realizes it's inappropriate, to enter willingly into his mind. He's called a Rasha. One is called a Rasha if he does so. And then this is Torah prohibitions, rabbinic prohibitions, or even later in the beginning of the first chapter, that brings from a Gemara that someone has the ability to protest. Someone has the ability to protest on something which is inappropriate happening in front of him, and he does not willingly. It's also called a Rasha. To that degree. But a Beinoni is not a Rasha ever once. He never is a Rasha once, and as I explains over here, Shloisha Levushe HaNefesh Avaham is the three garments of the animal soul, which is Machshava, Dibur, Maisa, which is a thought, speech, and action. Shemitzad Klipa, which come from Klipa, again associated with an animal soul, which is associated with Klipa. Ein goivrim by al nefshalikis, they never strengthen themselves on the godly soul. Lislabish beguf b'meich or b'peh. They never strengthen themselves of the godly soul, because again we learned so many times what is the desire of the godly soul, that they remain pure. And again, conversely, in the mitzvah say that they do what Hashem says. So in this battle, which we call the Alter Rebbe in Perek Tes, said the battlefield is a person's body. The two kings which are fighting over it is the godly soul and the animal soul. So the animal soul never strengthens itself, and the godly soul to ultimately invest in the body, in its brain, in its mind, in its mouth, corresponding to speech, of Shara Machivarim, and on the 248 limbs, Lachtim, to make them sin Tam Chas Hashem, which that would correspond to action, to impurify them. So the only one who's on the battlefield, who's triumphant on this battlefield, is the godly soul. The three garments of the godly soul, they are the only ones who invest in the body. When they say they invest in the body, because this is the thought, speech, and action of Teyak Mitzvah Torah, the 613 Mitzvahs of Torah. Now, obviously, when you say 613, you're dealing with the Mitzvahs Leisa, the 365 negative Mitzvahs, and 248 positive Mitzvahs. So who's on the battlefield? Who's winning? In other words, who is victorious over here in this battle? The godly soul. That again, pertaining what the Torah mandate of a clean thought, speech, and action, Chas v'Shalom, never transgressing the 365 mitzvahs leisesa, and on the mitzvahs say always doing the 365, if the 248 mitzvahs say, and whatever it entails, and ultimately how it unfolds in the rabbinic, anything which is associated with Ratzon Hashem. He never sinned, never transgressed, never did an avera. And he will never do a sin ever in his lifetime. He's never called a Rasha, even one moment, and even 1 second throughout his entire, even 1 hour or 1 moment throughout his entire life. And understandably, why he's not called a tzaddik. Based on this rich explanation of Rebbe in the previous chapters, we clearly understand why he's not called a tzaddik. It's like the guy who's fasting that day. There's nothing particularly spiritual about him. And the same thing, the Beinoni. He's a spiritual person. In other words, he's winning a war, and he's on the battlefield, and it's not an easy war. And like you say, there's reward, and Hashem is definitely appreciating his service. But essentially, he has a very strong and potent Nefesh Bahamis, which continues to send its signals.
What I don't understand is if he is sufficiently in control of even his thoughts,
yes,
that he can shut down those thoughts
absolutely
right away, that it's hard to reconcile that with what you're describing, that the evil within him is very much intact. Because I think if someone's at a level where they can really control their thoughts, then they are prevailing over that evil. Because thoughts are a different category
than speech and action.
Yes.
Absolutely. But could you say the thought is the thought could you align the thought and the heart? Not at all. The thought is still a garment thought is still a garment. If you notice, you have the Tanya, you look at the beginning of chapter 4, there's the inside, the brain, the heart, and then the thought, speech, and action are all garments over the brain, the intellect, and the heart, which is the emotions. It's ultimately a garment and not part of the structure of the soul itself. It's clearly a very refined garment, I agree, and there's no question that if you want to translate it in reality on the ground, there's no comparison, right? I could close my mouth and I could hold my hands. I should not do that or speak that, but my mind, it's always it's always flowing. But in the same token, thought is still a garment. The fact, and what's the definition of a garment, for example? We explained then, we learned in the 4th chapter, that a garment is, for example, you have a dirty shirt. You could take the shirt or the blouse and you could change it within a second to something clean, and vice versa. Similarly, thought, as much as Mishatet Tom is more a refined type of garment, the fact that I'm controlled, that I can change it, that it shouldn't think that shows that it's not something essential. Someone cannot change a hand, chas v'shalom. Today's technology, things may be possible. Chas v'shalom, it's still not a simple idea, because this is part and parcel of who you are. A garment you can change. Machshava you could change, because if it's thinking something inappropriate, let's call it a not clean garment, and then you think about it, you think a clean, holy machshava, or you shun that machshava, you throw it away, means to say that it has that similarity to the garment, as opposed to a midah, a character. Let's even look at this from this perspective. A character, could you change a character from one second to the other? No.
So you're saying that Beinoni has something evil in the character then, and the thought is just a manifestation of that.
It has that similarity. It has a common denominator with speech and action. The fact that they are levushim, it's a garment. It's a more refined garment. We all agree and we all know, right? And we know there are challenges, and so many times we're challenged with our thought much more than with our speech and action. Even though the way I must say this is a famous joke. So this individual, which was. He was, or is based on the study of Tanya, or in general, he was comparing thought to action. He said, to thought to speech. He says, "What are you talking about? When I thought chas v'shalom to think something inappropriate, I know it's inappropriate and I throw it away. But I'm standing between people and I could say something juicy and get everybody's attention, and it's gonna. That's my real sign. That's my real challenge." It's an interesting perspective and point of view, but it's not ultimately realistic, because close our mouth, we bite your tongue, and you don't say that which you feel you should say. But thought? But in the end of the day, even thought, right? In the end of the day, even thought is a garment, and I have full control over it. In this context, Neshal Lev means that the lev, the heart, should not ultimately be successful with that signal that it's sending to my thought. The moment I think it's inappropriate, I have the complete authority and I'm completely in charge to throw that thought away.
So you're tracing the evil within the Beinoni to what? Or you're calling it
to the whole, his mind, his heart, his drives, his desires. It's very regular and very normal. That's why, again, an example of the fasting. The guy who's fasting, he didn't lose that whole sensation of eating. Very much intact. Can't wait till the fast is over. In this case, can't say the Beinoni is waiting till life to be over in order to get rid of this whole challenge, is fasting. But it's something that it's completely intact. The sensation of eating is there. The sensation of anything, that normal approach to anything, which the heart, not the heart of the godly soul. The heart of the godly soul, he knows one thing: to love God and to fear God. But that's the godly soul. But because the Beinoni never got rid of, in no form or fashion, of the animal soul, he has no of the tzaddik or biyarto, right? None of the tens of thousands of levels of the tzaddikim he also doesn't have. Right? The tzaddik got rid of so much and got rid of so much, but he didn't get rid of nothing, so it's completely intact. That's us. That regular heart desire which we have to constantly control. Not to say that, not to do that, and even not to think that. Because the actual accepting of thought, that is a transgression, and that makes a person a rasha. The fact that the heart sent a signal that the person walked outside and there was something inappropriate which caught his attention, that's not where it becomes a rasha. When he gives in to that attention, This heart, there's a human part of within the person. What is the human part of it? That's the Nefesh Bahamis. Look in the first chapter. It's the Nefesh Bahamis. This which animates us, this which gives us life, this makes us human beings. That's the Nefesh Bahamis, it's the animal soul. And he didn't get rid of the animal soul. What does an animal soul go and he gets out into the world? He has challenges because the animal soul drives to be an animal. Again, we define the animal as whatever contributes to its comfort. That's what it does. And it's a contribution to its comfort to speak that, or to do that, or chas v'shalom to think that. It's a pleasure for him. It's entertaining for him, for the eyes, for the ears, and so on. So the animal is completely intact. It has the challenges. Something signal and says, look at that, do that. Or, and again, in mitzvah says, say, sleep in, be a little lazy. That's the animal. Whatever contributes comfort is to another shot in the pillow. Instead of when there's a time someone has to go to a shir, as an example. Right? So the animal soul still there, but the person says no to that. That's where he's never a Rasha, not even once in his whole life, because he never accepts the signal of that Nefesh Bahamis. The Nefesh Bahamis is still very much there. He's not a tzaddik at all. This is clarity to life. I mean, this is revolutionary. This is definitely revolutionary. Oh, I went outside and I had a challenge. Who am I? You're you. Something is wrong. I thought I was by davening. I thought I was shuckling so much. I thought I loved God, and all of a sudden I have other challenges. I'm lost. I'm confused. Don't be confused. You could even be the Beinoni, someone who's never sinned once, if you don't give in. The moment you give in, right, and then a person has to be very honest with himself. It's interesting. The Alter Rebbe uses expression when he speaks about thought. He says he pushes away the thought with two hands. Interesting expression. I heard this once, but I thought it resonated very much. The Alter Rebbe was very precise, as we know. The Alter Rebbe was extremely precise in the expressions, in his wording. And the Alter Rebbe so many times he said once that he every word that he wrote, or every letter that he wrote, he thought the entire Tanya. Throughout every letter he wrote, he thought through the entire Tanya from beginning to the end. And in a certain letter, a vav, he waited 6 weeks. He wasn't sure to write with a vav or not without a vav. And it's not a mind of me and you; it's a mind of the Alter Rebbe. So you understand the precision of the Alter Rebbe's words. But he used this expression. He pushes away with two hands, because many times that we try to be from Yidden, or we think we're from Yidden, and how do you say, one hand in and one hand out? Yes and no. Chas v'shalom, if there's any little bit yes, I agree, I formally or willingly, deliberately, advertently accept that thought, I'm a Rasha at the moment. A Beinoni is not a Rasha once, which means b'shtei yadayim. The moment someone realizes it's inappropriate, he pushes away with both hands. That no, I'm not going to accept it even a millisecond to enter my mind. And that's the Beinoni. So he's definitely someone special. Let's not get carried away. He's definitely someone special, but we see how it's attainable to us. Nobody could tell us to do anything or to speak anything, and even to think something which is inappropriate. We have complete control, and we have the 100% ability to govern even over our thoughts.
So what happens to the Beinoni who lives a very virtuous life, but occasionally he will slip up? And maybe he doesn't push that thought away.
He's not a Beinoni.
That's it. You're gonna say his whole life he's no longer.
Okay. So first of all, the answer on the surface, and I must say that I was going to comment on the expression Alter Rebbe says over here. Okay, so we'll clarify what you're asking over here. But let's say on the surface, answer is yes. What happens in the middle of Yom Kippur? I took just one little sip of water. Am I fasting? No, I'm not. Can I control myself to fast the whole day? Absolutely. Tens of thousands of Jews do it around the world. And the same thing. Yesterday I did. This morning I did. Now I did not. That was my decision. Nothing slips in my acceptance of even a thought. Even one thought throughout my life. Nothing slips. There's no such thing something slipped. That was my deliberate decision. So if it did, it's like I just took a little zip, and therefore I'm not fasting. Yes, I'm not a Beinoni, I'm a Rasha.
But a thought is not tangible. The analogy with the food is, I don't know, I find
it's in the context of Avodas Hashem, it's very tangible. And mainly, the main thing is it's not our desire. We have this is part of Torah mitzvahs. Once it's part of Torah mitzvahs, it says Hashem doesn't tell someone to do something that he or she cannot do, or it's unattainable to them. And the fact is that we have complete control of our thoughts. And you're dealing with somebody who this morning he controlled it, and again, these things could come every, not 5 minutes, something 5 seconds. But I control, and if I did not control, I allowed that to come in. I allowed that to come in. I'm a Rosh, I'm not a Beinani. I ate. Even a little bit. So now the big question is, and this I must say that so the Beinani is a very special person, but we do know that it's 100% attainable. I know it's attainable. I know that I will or will not invite that thought in, or allow that thought to come in. Chas v'shalom, to allow it to come in. I know that I have full control not to allow that thought to come in. And I know, we all know, and it might be difficult, but we have full control, and this is our mandate. Torah says, mean to say that we have full control and we can hold back even a thought. And therefore, when we chas v'shalom do, we're called a Rasha. We're not a Beinani. A Beinani lo'aver v'le'yaver, but in the same time, we can understand how attainable the Beinani is. And I'd like to conclude over here with just this to answer your question, and one little expression that Alter Rebbe says so interestingly, and so comforting. So these words over here, choice of words. This becomes such a mirror. It's a mirror to Avodas, to the average person's Avodas Hashem over here. I thought you would ask the question like this. Let's look in these little expression. What does Alter Rebbe say? That a Beinani le'over aveda miyamav, he never sinned. V'le'yavir le'olam, and he will never sin. Okay, so this is the first question, and again, it's very much similar to the question this what you pointed out, because when you say le'over, first v'le'yavir aveda miyamav, what if someone did once sin? He sinned. He's never in the game again. Accordingly, he's once a Rasha, and that's it. He's never a Beinani. And Alter Rebbe says, not v'le'yavir le'olam from now on. V'le'yavir aveda miyamav, he never sin. So that itself says if you sin once, you're out. You know, when you're playing a game and you're out. No, but there's no buts. You're out. Apparently, this term, this expression says this so strongly. But the answer is no. If Alter Rebbe tells us, and I will focus on this expression Alter Rebbe says in the beginning of Perek Yudalid, he says B'achareo. So interestingly, this is the midah of kol adam. The first words midas habeinani is the midah. In other words, this is the which is established for every single person. This is the mandate of every single person. Kol adam yimshech. Every person is to draw himself after this avodah of being the beinani. What do you mean yimshech? You are or you're not. If you're there. So two answers. If you're there, what do you mean draw yourself to be the Beinani? So first of all, it's not a very big question because this is the Beinani. He always has to draw himself more and more to be the Beinani because he never got rid of the never got rid of the evil. So always Yimshech. But in the end of the day, Alter Rebbe is talking to every single person. Draw after this avoid of the Beinani. You see how attainable it is to you? And then this is the way you fulfill your mandate not to be even a Rasha one moment of your life. So it could be in the end of the day it's talking to someone who chas v'shalom fell through, let's say even once, which he cannot be classified or categorized as a Beinani, but in the same token, Alter Rebbe says Yimshech, we still ought to draw to be the Beinani. And let's go back to the example of fasting. What if someone in the middle of Yom Kippur takes a sip of water? That's it? Done? Now I could just pull out some good sandwich and eat? The answer is no, even halachically. If you fell through and you drank a drink of water in Yom Kippur, you're not allowed to continue eating. You have to continue fasting. And the same thing, if chas v'shalom someone did fall through Yimshech, he still has to continue being the Beinani. So that answers that part. But how do we answer... Again, and finally, how do we answer v'lei avar miyama v'lei yavir le'elam? That's a good question. How could you say he never sinned? How does it go together? And the contrary, when you say even someone who chas v'shalom until now was not a Beinani, from now on he should draw himself to be the Beinani. So that itself says that it could be prior to that he was not the Beinoni had Alter Rebbe say v'lo yover miyamav. He never did an Aveda before.
About Tshuva.
About Tshuva, but did he do Avedas miyamav? So the answer is take this analogy which you're saying. Let's say about Tshuva. There's an expression of the Rambam when he deals with about Tshuva. It's good you're pointing that out because it takes me to that Rambam immediately. The Rambam says a very beautiful expression that the Yid says to Hashem in his process, in his experience of Tshuva, Hashem, I'm not that person of yesterday, the one who sinned yesterday. I'm a different person. Look at the lashon of the Rambam in Tshuva. I'm a different person. Which means to say that when a person does Tshuva, he really he lifts himself to a new level, and he becomes really a totally new person. He's not the person of yesterday. Similarly, very, very much similarly, in this case over here, when somebody enters that mode of Beinoni, he's on a level that sin, what means le'avar miyamav? Right? Let's say I'm standing, let's say even get even clearer. Let's say I'm standing next to somebody who sins. Does it mean because I'm in the same domain as someone who sins, I'm a sinner? Not at all. Not at all. Because the fact that I'm standing next to someone who sins doesn't make me one bit of a sinner, even though I'm in the same within a few feet, in the same proximity of someone who's sinning. Right? Now, focus on the person himself. Yesterday he sinned, but the fact is, yesterday he's another person. Yesterday he was in the level of Rasha, and today he's in the level of Beinoni. The fact that he's in so close in proximity, it looks like this is the person of yesterday. Externally, it looks like the person of yesterday. He lives in the same address as the person of yesterday. There's so many similarities to the person of yesterday, but it doesn't bring him, or not because there's so many similarities to the person of yesterday, does it say that this person is connected to the person of yesterday. And that's why I say this example. It doesn't mean because if you're in the same room as somebody who's sinning, or in the same domain, who's sitting at the same table as someone who's sinning, you become closer to the phenomenon of sin. Absolutely not. And the same thing when you're telling somebody a Rasha, which yesterday was a Rasha. Today he's a Beinoni, which means he yanked himself away from that state of yesterday. Now he becomes in a state that the whole phenomenon of sin is completely negated from his consciousness, which means his desire is clearly, and he's so determined, I will never give in to my nefesh bahamis, maybe in action, maybe in speech, maybe in thought. And I will do all the mitzvahs that Hashem tells me to do, which is again associated with action and speech and thought. And therefore that whole notion of sinning is so removed from me, I become somebody like lo yaver ma'olam, like I never sinned, because it's not the same person as yesterday. I'm in a different world. I look similar to the person of yesterday. That look like that, like someone sitting at the same table as someone who's sinning. It doesn't make me a sinner because I'm sitting so close. So even I'm close in proximity, again, it looks like the same person. Externally it is. But because I yank myself from that whole world of sinning to a total different world, the Alter Rebbe could say, now you are a person that its sin is so negated from you that lo yaver miyamav is like you never sinned before. It's not your world. In conclusion, what we learn from this, that a person in every time, chas v'chalil, if everybody fell through in the past, still we ought to draw ourselves to be that Beinoni, to know clearly that the Hashem mandate of us in the Torah is not, that never told us to become inhumane. He never told us that maybe one day He'll help us to become a little more spiritual and a little less driven to things which are inappropriate, but that's His decision. The fact that we still have that Ra within ourselves, because in no form or fashion are we the tzaddik, so the Ra is very much intact, and it wants to make us sin on a constant basis, and it wants us to keep us laid back from doing what we're supposed to do. We have to know that that is not our mandate, to shun that. Our mandate is not to allow that to go further, chas v'shalom, to actually impurify our action, speech, or thought, and again, it makes us say, to hold us back from doing what we're supposed to do in action, speech, and thought. Have a great evening.